Hi, everyone, and welcome to Devtoberfest Week 3. It's Front End Friday again, and today we're going to talk about OpenUI5 2.x, a long-awaited topic. And we have Peter Musik here, Chief Architect of UI5. And before we get into the session, I just want to quickly promote the Devtoberfest group in the ICP community, because if you go there, you can earn points towards the Devtoberfest grand prize. We have a fancy game board set up, and the grand prize is actually pretty grand. So make sure to check that out. But yeah, without further ado, I hand it over to Peter. If you have questions, just put them in the chat, and we're happy to answer them. So off you go, Peter. Have fun.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Nico. Hi, everyone, and happy to see you is not true, but happy that I feel you being in the live stream. Yeah, today I prepared a topic for everyone, which is, I think, really interesting because we are moving forward with UI5 towards a new major version. And in order to understand what's changing, I think it's really essential that we take a look into that, how you can get ready for, in this case, OpenUI5 2.x, because this is the version of 2.x which is already available for you, and you can also play with that and gather some feedback on that. And that's why I prepared also a session a little bit on top of that. What I have done the last time here at Devtoberfest, when I showed you this TypeScript end-to-end session, we built a small application, a library. And this small application, a library, is, it's not made 2.x ready. So that's the thing what we want to do together today, to make that ready. But before we start, let's look a little bit back to set the stage, to do some motivation on why we all do that. So at UI5Con 2023, we announced this topic UI5 2.0, and first we made clear that we are developing a legacy-free UI5. And this was also a story about the innovation of UI5, of the framework, and the whole offering we have over the last couple of years. For those who remember, in the early 2009, we started this whole project, and it came out, I think, around 2011, 12. The first people out of SAP or really started then to develop or start developing UI5 applications. And at that point in time, everything was greenfield, so we could do a lot of innovations in the framework. And this ended a little bit after a while, after we have achieved, let's say, a current, what's a kind of a technical death in the framework. And we need to ensure also, if we develop new features, that they are developed in a compatible way. And around 2016, we started this UI5 Evolution project, which should also help us to unchain a little bit our limitations by introducing new concepts. And I think I showed this slide also sometimes back. I don't know exactly where overall, but it's, let's say, the cornerstones, the key pillars of this UI5 Evolution project, because our main goal was with over the last couple of years, gaining more technical depth in the framework. A lot of things lacked with regards to performance, or the modular design was not really done everywhere in a proper way. And also we invented, due to the fact that we started in 2009 with the development of a web UI framework, and the standards and trends have been established more and more. So more and more standards have been introduced by the browser. And with that, we could even also rely on existing standards rather than developing these things by our own. But due to the fact that we were there already before these standards were established, they have been made. And then this was a little bit, our, let's say, project name, our mission, the UI5 Evolution mission, to modernize the framework in a way that we have a modular core, so that everything which is in the framework's core part, that we can make this more fine-granular. So we did a modularization in detail to make up smaller fine-granular module set that you can choose exactly what you need. At the end, this has also always the thing with the performance in mind, that you can reduce more or less the amount of bytes which are necessary to load and to start up the UI5 framework. We also try to get more and more rid of globals, because while this was a common practice in 2009 when we all started that, nowadays you don't do that anymore. So globals is more a bad practice and should be omitted and as much as you can. And that's why we're also pushing forward to get rid of the globals, because this is also advantages when, let's say, loading modules in different, you can also think of different versions or something like that, then you can load it if they are not exposing that. Their API to the global. So, and if you get that more in an export of a module. It also has another advantage when it comes to dependencies, that globals, you don't know whether you are dependent on that. If you have a dependency or a module loader which requires a kind of dependencies, then this is something where you need to definitely declare that. And on global side, you don't declare it, you just use it, but we don't have a knowledge about that. So all that together, more or less, was for us essential in the core of the framework. To ensure that we have really a clean foundation in order to come up with proper tools, which later on can also provide a proper framework to boot up, and that we know exactly what your application requires for this booting mechanism. This also plays later a role when we are now moving forward with our new Bootstrap in 2.x. Unfortunately, I can't show that today, but I have, there was a UI5 live sessions. It was 1 or 2 months back when we showed an early snapshot on that. And this video will also soon be available on our YouTube live stream, but I come to that later on. We also introduced in the whole evolution the build and development tooling. I think many of you are quite happy now having the UI5 CLI available with its extensibility features, which opened up a real ecosystem of developing of extensions for the UI5 development experience. And this is also, in my opinion, a great benefit now of the whole evolution project, that something like this is available. When we look into rendering, we had to change from our string-based rendering in the past to a DOM-based rendering. In case of updates, we can also do it more concrete, so that we exchange them just the attributes or the text or the inner HTML, which is just the HTML, which is just necessary, by adopting that via DOM-based APIs. And this is then started with the rendering mechanism V2 and V4. And I hope in the meantime, every one of you has been migrated to at least V2 rendering in your case. All in all, when I come to UI5 core, I also expect one thing on the long run. This is the universal toolbox. So the framework itself should become something like the Swiss knife, that you can then, let's say, use, the formatting capabilities of the framework as ES modules in a different framework as well, or in Node or whatever, to align the things what we do on the client side, maybe also with a Node runtime on the server side. It all comes also with a benefit that if we have the things possible to run also at a node, on a Node environment, we can move things what we have currently in the browser runtime into a build time. And this has more aspects that we can improve and do pre-rendering on steps like that in the future. And that was also the idea of this universal toolbox topic, to come up with something like this, that we have these possibilities in the future. Moving closer to standards and trends, as said, this is really a beneficial thing, because with that you can reduce the amount of bytes of your framework and use the things which are built in the browser. For example, if you look into ES6 having all this, or ES6 Plus having all this new functionality, and we also opened that up with the UI5 tooling, that you can also use modern JavaScript APIs, this helps you then to build more effectively application, and it looks also more modern. Together with TypeScript enablement, we also made it possible that you can now write imports and classes. We see that also later on in the demo. And we are also on our way to make the CSS variables available for the theming concept of UI5, so that we have also here a more standard way to modify and adopt also the UI elements a little bit via variables. And this helps at the end, and also to improve our theming capabilities together with the UI theme designer, that the theming gets much more uncomplicated at the end. And this is also a trend we are moving forward. And then we have seen in some places already, I showed that in this session, that we are working also on the seamless support or at the UI5Con keynote for the web components, that we now have with the web components a new way of how component development or UI control development looks like. And we are making the integration of these web components as seamless as possible so that you can really integrate it like a regular UI5 control more or less into your XML views and bind it and connect it to your framework. So, but talked enough about the evolution project here. So this was all what we have planned there, more thought at the compatible way forward. Yeah, we didn't think of at that point in time making incompatible changes, even if we had these things in mind. So with the UI5 tooling, with the modular core and introduction of the async APIs, we didn't remove anything so far. And then we thought, yeah, maybe to not end in an innovator's dilemma, we also need to at the end at some place look that we need to do some incompatible changes. And this was the idea of having a legacy-free UI5. But if we say legacy-free, this means then we remove also stuff from the framework. And then this couldn't be really a compatible way forward. And that's why I decided then to call this new version 2.0. And why 2.0? If we look into the term semantic versioning, because that's what we follow, then the patch version means really, yeah, we do only small fixes, small changes, and that's what we usually do continuously. If there is a bug and you report that, and we create a new patch for that UI5 version and roll that out. We also do at the moment mainly minor versions. So there in these minor versions, we are integrating this the latest features coming up, which are non-breaking. And we also say from time to time that we have these long-term support versions in UI5 where you can rely on 1 or 2 years from a supportability on these versions. But all this didn't help us really to escape from the problem that our technical dev somehow overtake us, and it breaks us down that our innovation can't be done fast enough, and therefore we decided, yeah, there are also some breaking changes inside. And mainly these breaking changes are relying on things that there are a few incompatible things in a change of the behavior of some stuff, or we are removing things. And now here I take the slides again from the UI5Con to explain you a little bit what we have in mind with UI5 2.x. So mainly, this is really a removal of deprecated libraries. So we have these old libraries, Commons, Suite, UX3, and so on. They must not or should not be used anymore. And with 2.0, we ensure that they must not be used anymore. So we really remove them, and you need to clean up the code then to keep your app running with a newer version then of UI5. And we also do one thing. We have a lot of deprecated code on our basis in the meantime. And this deprecated code, at some point in time, we really need to remove it because these deprecated code things, they keep, let's say, things open like that we have to maintain old behaviors, and we have then 2 tracks how to do things. So especially one thing like if you have the asynchronous and synchronous behaviors in the code, these are always 2 different tracks, and this makes it really hard then to do really refactorings and modernization of our existing code base. And that's why we said we remove that. Yeah, one example is synchronous JavaScript loading with globals. That's also one thing we remove. This should be moved into our SAP UI require. I call it always our UI5 AMD-like syntax. And what we should do as well is, the outdated alternative APIs, we also remove that. But they have been for sure deprecated. So that's mainly the intention of 2.x. So it helps us to clean up the code from, let's say, things we don't or could not really maintain anymore in the future in order to make really steps forward. And it helps you at the end to build applications which are really modern. And you should also with that overcome any performance issues which had happened in the past, maybe by accidentally using synchronous APIs or stuff like that. So now we are coming closer to the UI5 2.0. And with that, I would like to go over now to Devtoberfest 2024. Let's get ready for OpenUI5 2.x. So And here I take a little bit also the slides I used at the TechEd presentation this year, because I think they are quite comprehensive and bring it really to the point what's about getting ready to for UI5 2.x. So first of all, at the end, what we want to do is we want to ensure that you and we introduce best practices in applications and your libraries in your code to get rid of the globals, as I said, as I explained to you, because they make it hard for us to understand which kind of dependencies are required for your code, to use the new asynchronous APIs and new factories. And for that, we have a quite comprehensive documentation available. So this is the demo kit. I think Nico will also share the links in parallel to you in the chat. And when looking into these best practices here, you get quite a good overview why for what this all is about. So best practices for legacy-free code. It explains that you should not use asynchronous loading and increase the size a little bit if it's better maybe. The reason for that is also to explain it a little bit, sometimes with some background. If you want to ensure that your code is CSP compliant, this requires really that we have no synchronous loading anymore inside, and that's also a reason why we are pushing forward for this asynchronous loading of code and modules and data. And you should try to also look through that list and try to understand these parts and implement this also in your applications. No sync loading of data. This is a sync XHR in the browser, which causes warnings. You would see that then. The global names should not be used, and ideally also get rid of deprecated APIs. Yeah, and then you get also some information here about that, why this is the case and where to find this API reference for the deprecated APIs. For example, you can go there and get a complete list of these deprecated APIs. It takes a little bit, but it comes up here, and you see then also for the versions, these deprecations. You can check out more. There are also some APIs which are partially deprecated. I also would like to mention that this is also important to understand. So the theming parameters get API. This is something which is only partially deprecated, and this has a good reason, because there is this what I mentioned before. We had this asynchronous and synchronous tracks. In the beginning, this was a synchronous API because we wanted to make it easy for the developers to grasp what's happening. I think nowadays many of you are really understanding asynchronous development. You know how to work with promises and stuff like that. And this wasn't really the case in the beginning when a big workforce of people stepped up to JavaScript development. Then this was complicated, and at that point in time, we weren't really, let's say, it wasn't so obvious for us what kind of consequences had. Yeah, it is also a bit the learning over the last decade. What all that means. And we thought synchronous APIs are quite interesting. If you load small things, this is really no problem. But if many things are loaded that way, then you get to this blocking of this single browser thread, which blocks also your complete UI, and you get to a stucky behavior of the application. But in the parameters get, there is one thing that we have this object-based API, and this object-based API, where you provide an options in object, then you get by default the asynchronous callback going out. Whereas if you use it in the past with the synchronous API that you pass a string as instead of the object, then this leads really to so requesting the parameter value. This leads then to a synchronous request. And that this kind of things, they are deprecated. And this is also one thing where you need to prepare your application to get rid of that. Because in 2.0, this will cause issue. So the application will not start up then anymore again, because this functionality is removed then from that. So, and there are also other hints, like in the XHR, don't use the false attribute for async and stuff like that. And here there is a little bit more of information about the deprecated core API. Maybe we take a short look into that. So there are some APIs, the legacy API methods, and partially we also explain new methods then. So apply theme, there you have new theming module, and you can say set theme. So this modularization aspect, having a smaller module for that, instead of say SAP UI get core apply theme, which requires that the core needs to know all that when booting up. And And this is something we have changed in the background, and that's why all this modularization together with the new booting mechanism, all that plays together. And therefore, this is so essential that this is known to you. So the other thing, if it comes to the module syntax, we have seen it also in this slide. In the past, we had this jQuery SAP UI require, but there is even more. If you were already on SAP UI define, even there you could have done some mistakes, yeah? There, the enums, we had some pseudo modules for them in the past, like for sort order. This is something you should not do, not importing that way. Rather do it like that. Import the library because the enums are part of the library, and then from the library access the sort order.
Peter,
Yeah.
I think you're only sharing your PowerPoint, by the way, in case you're showing something in the browser.
Oh, this can't be. Why don't you say that earlier?
I wasn't sure whether the browser. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so let's go back quickly over that list. Yeah, but at the end, it's what I mentioned is more or less that list here. So going through that a little bit, explaining that. Here, the deprecated APIs, to say it quickly. This parameters API, where we have this where you can also request it via name, or you can use an object to do that. That's what I mentioned. And yeah, let's come back because here I showed that part here with the SAP UI define syntax, SAP M sort order. That's the bad practice. The good practice is use the library for getting the enum and then extracting the enum from the library. And there are more things. So don't use, let's say, globals to access something like the message box. Import it properly. Here like that. You can also do it with SAP UI require, a dynamic require of the message box, and then yeah, then it yeah, works properly. And this list is getting longer. It explains also about third party and troubleshooting, so how you can yeah, get some help in analyzing issues. It explains then also some details when you go a bit down for app development, where you need to take action also. So you should use asynchronous loading. So get rid of the factories. So here you points you to deprecated factories. And you get also here a left-right legacy API versus recommended API, modern API example. So this should guide you also how this can be implemented. And yeah, it step by step gives you more hints. It's talking about hints around data binding, about what to do in case of doing standalone apps, to use the component support, to bootstrap the application here. It talks about the manifest. This is also pretty interesting then, where you get also some hints what you should do with the libs to preload them properly and how to identify when this is missing. So a typical thing, if a library is not preloaded properly, then you get single requests, which cause also heavy load then, and partially also this runs then much longer. You have seen that maybe in the debug mode of the application, and then yeah, there is step by step it's explaining that. But this, I would say, is pretty complex, let's say, to have that all in mind. And therefore, let's go back to the slides, and I hope now I'm sharing the slides. There are better solutions as well available, which helps you already with that. So reading that, understanding that is one thing, but it's more practical to get really some support. Before I come to that, I just want to really mention one thing. We also say with the whole, even UI5 2x also, that we ensure that best practices based applications, they keep running even with newer major versions of UI5. So if you also continuously upgrade your applications to best practices, this will also be an investment of being ready for the next step. And to make you ready for the next step, we have already tooling support for that available. So there is for sure tooling, the new version of the tooling, UI5 tooling CLI, where we ensure that you can use modern JavaScript. so that you can also benefit from, let's say, array functions or whatever, which were not allowed to use in the past. Yeah, this in the meantime you can use. All browsers supporting that. The UI5 tooling is able to also bundle that because it then understands this functionality properly, that in the preload this can be also packaged properly. And in order to ensure that these best practices, which are listed then this in the demo kit, that you can find them and spot them in your application, there's the UI5 linter tool available, which is like a static code analysis tool. You can run that on your application or your library or your reuse component, and this points you to the places where you should take a look into and do some actions in order to make the application ready for 2.x. And this is what I would show you in the demo together with TypeScript, because TypeScript in addition also brings you a nice additional feature on top that you get already embedded in the IDE, hints about deprecated APIs. You get also the documentation built in, and we see that now also live in that demo. And now after talking for 26 minutes, let's go into code. For the code, I said I have taken the repository from the last Devtoberfest session, and this one now we want to make and get ready for 2.x. So Nico, I hope you can see my editor in a second. So I bring it up. Let me know. Not that we are in the blind in the blind mode again. So this is this project here. In this project, the last time I used the bookshop, the CAP server, and the CAP server is connected with the application as a dev dependency. That's here done like that, together with the UI5 middleware CAP, which embeds this CAP server seamless into UI5 application, so you can really have a connection to that server without having that more or less deployed together. It doesn't need to be embedded, so you can really get it in. And then I have a library next to that. And in this library, I showed the last time how to develop a chart component, a chart control based on a third-party library to integrate it in the bookshop. And let's take a look how that looks like. So I start quickly the server. So this is now starting up the UI5 tooling. And for you also, you see that here the UI5 tooling now also starts the CAP server with it. And it mounts then the path for the CAP server for the services from the CAP server in a similar way, like if you would start it standalone, but it's running on localhost 8080 now. And now let's log in, Devtoberfestler. So that's my username for today. And this is the application I built the last time. So it is this bookshop. We can do some sorting. You have possibilities to order something. I explained that how that works with the deferred action binding in OData v4. And then I have this chart to display the stock below. And now, if I would like to run that with v2, so let's do that. I'm having an index CDN page. And there is already in the nightly version, a v2 version of UI5 available from which you can boot. So SDK OpenUI5 org/nightly/2. And this is the place where you can just load UI5 2x. And now, I should start from index CDN because otherwise it's not changed. That's from the dev tools locally. And here you see nothing. So that's the point. So now we are running in error. So it's not working with UI5 2x. So it's still loading because I have disabled a cache here, and we run into error, synchronization mode, unsupported. So future fatal, I should look into that. Okay, so, but in order to get to that, we can do a lot of things. So let's first go back to the 128, and I install the UI5 linter as a dependency globally. So they have the latest version available, npm i-g add UI5/linter. With that, now I get the UI5 lint command. And when I run the UI5 lint command in my application here, I get already 22 problems. So I didn't do a good job the last time. as the template isn't on the last slide, and I made also some mistakes. Some of them I made afterwards, after the session, to really showcase a bit of what this linter is checking all about. So the linter is really checking your TypeScript or JavaScript code. The linter is checking in the HTML of your application. The linter is checking in the XML of your application, and also the JSON, the manifest JSON of your application to be correct for UI5 2x. So the first obvious finding now is here in the UI5 YAML. I have used a very old library. I made that in by accident to show you that this is detected here from the linter. So this is very easy because I didn't use anything from Commons. I can just remove it. If you would have used these controls, then look for alternative controls from the M library for that to get rid of the old library, or in other libraries to use one of the non-deprecated controls. So then I see in the next step, in the main controller, I see some errors. And let's go to my main controller and check that. So here I see there is the date input being used, and this is deprecated. It's not visible here because that's the issue what the IDE has, but if I use it then below in the code, then I get also hints that with the strike through that this is deprecated. And this is already for me something which is beneficial now with the TypeScript development environment, that I get this kind of support. So if it would be JavaScript, only the UI5 linter would find it to me, it would point me to the right line where to fix it, but I would not have it built in like I see it here for TypeScript. That's also one interesting point why TypeScript is so essential and helps you then to spot issues in the code. So I removed that because I did only some logging, some stupid get metadata logging of that in the console, so I can simply get rid of that part. So now looking into the next issue, I see, oh, it detects that I use a deprecated property of the button. How does that look like? It's also not, unfortunately, shown here, but at least if I hover on that, I also see the deprecated information for that property. And then for that button, I know now, yeah, I should change that. And what should I use? So I run the UI5 linter now just with showing me the errors and the warnings, but I can also use UI5 lint minus details. And then it gives me also some more hints what I should do to fix that issue. So here in this case, it says use deprecated property tab class button, replace by press event. Okay, let's do so. Press. And you might ask yourself now, couldn't that be automated? Yes, well, it could be automated, and that's also what we are currently looking in, that we have a kind of a quick fix for some of the issues to help you to do this more in a more automatic fashion. Do not do that manually. But for the time being, we concentrated on the analysis part for the UI5 linter. And in one of the next versions, we will also come up, hopefully with some quick fixes, and maybe increase that more and more, that support to help you to modernize the apps even a bit more in an automated fashion for the easy ones. It cannot solve everything like usually. Sometimes really it needs us human beings in front of that to fix the errors. So now looking into the next one, I go down to line 34. So here it says access to global variable jQuery. Do not use global variables. So this is a hint that maybe an import is missing. So if I want to really use jQuery, I should ensure that I import jQuery from my third party. And then this should go away. But now it says, yeah, that comes now from the check that we don't expose these APIs anymore properly. Yeah, for that you should not make use of that, or so this control API is finally deprecated, and that's why this should be cleaned up. So I remove that now because this is not really needed for our case. So this was this sorting control, and I changed the sort source then just by looking up with jQuery, but we have a much better way. From the event, and this is also a nice feature of what we have in TypeScript here, we get typed events now. So if you now say event get source, from that icon press event, this knows already that this is an icon. And then I get also already the code completion for the icon, which is really nice and a convenient feature to develop then by having all this support here. So this was this control thing which is deprecated. Okay, now we should be clean on that one. Let's see. So now we have the warnings in our index HTML. And these warnings, they are coming from the fact that HTML isn't case sensitive and or is case insensitive. And therefore, it doesn't make much sense to have camel cased attributes. In this case, it's better to use this kebab case or dashed version variants of that. So everywhere where we had that in the past, we recommend then to use that. The XX parameters, we can ignore them. They should also not be in these templates anymore, so they are in there by accident. So, but they are also not mentioned here, and it only points us to the ones we had here. Resource roots we also made correct then from the naming perspective and the on init as well. So by doing that, I have cleaned up then this one. It mentions then one more thing here, and this is one thing I would like to mention as well, a use of unsafe inline script. That's the hint. If you use this index HTML for booting, this is also not CSP compliant if you do something like that. I did that only for simplicity reason now for the CDN case, because when loading from CDN and I have my own app and I have a library inside, or like here a third-party package, which is not properly included in my namespace of my application, what is the case now in the development scenario here, then I need to add this resource roots mapping. And it wasn't sufficient to put it here on top because the dot has a special meaning here for us in resource roots. It's like handled like a slash for us, yeah. So if you use a third party like the .js, this needs to go into the loader config, which is also the future direction, yeah, that we have loader configs for that. That here you put in the mapping, and here with that I ensure that if I now load from index CDN my application, I still want to load the Devtoberfest lib from my local resources and the jar.js from my local resource. So just for you as a hint, keep that in mind when doing something and you see, oh, now I switched to CDN, something isn't being loaded properly, then check what isn't being loaded. Oh, most probably you need to do a mapping for that.
Peter, a quick
And
question.
yeah,
So speaking of the CDN, Marian actually had a question. Is there a nightly version of the OpenUI5 2.x coming
yeah.
as a pre-release to NPM JS instead of the
Ah,
CDN so it can be
no,
used with the UI5 tooling?
no, this is not the case at the moment. So we haven't planned for that yet because there is not really a snapshot concept for NPM. And then if you push something, you need to create a concrete version. So it would have a timestamped version on that. And but we have another concept, and I show that also later when we made the UI5 app here too already. You can use the workspaces concept of the UI5 tooling to connect against your a locally synced OpenUI5 repository. When you switch it to the main branch, then this includes the code for the UI5 2.x already. But I come to that. And if I forget it, Nico or Maya just mentioned that, then I show it again.
All right, cool.
Okay,
Thank you.
so let's continue. So with the next one, so we have the same index HTML here again for the normal one without the CDN. And here we adopt the same thing to get rid of the warnings are not that critical, but I just make that for having a nice output at the end that we are green. So now we cleaned that up. Let's go to the next one. So manifest JSON. I used a deprecated property. Shame on me the last time, and I showed that also to use that. Its synchronization mode is deprecated and must not be used anymore. So in 2.0, this is really breaking, and therefore we already cleaned it up to not use it anymore. So the reasoning behind that, I need to also look that up, but I learned that also with that UI5 linter that I must not use that anymore. So let's remove that here, synchronization mode. And if someone from the V4 team is watching, you can also comment on that. So, and then we have the next finding. This goes to the model. It detects usage of deprecated value for parameter B async. And here the JSON model, and I made really a synchronous loading of a data JSON now. This is using this false property to say, yeah, load it synchronously. In some cases, people did that in the past, but you see also these kind of things are detected by the UI5 linter, and then it hints you to that you should clean that up and get rid of it. So maybe for the synchronization mode, let me do one thing. We have the details. So as of 110, the synchronization parameter is absolutely obsolete and must be omitted. See API reference here. So it's explained then the API reference, it points you to that. And what does it say? So here we have the, sometimes, let's do it like that. This hash in the beginning is not correct in this case. It's pointing to that, okay, but OData model V4, something to fix. Later on, I let the colleagues know that there is a problem with that link. And then here in the synchronization mode, that's this one here. It's deprecated. See also data reuse. So at the end, yeah, it explains at some place why this is happening. And we don't now spend too much time on that. You see, this would now spend much. So let's remove that and continue. We had the B async in the models. Let's remove that. We don't need that. We only need the data JSON. Then this is tests. We ignore them for the, no, we don't ignore them. We fix them as well. Resource roots, compat version. So, and also the templates which were used to create that, we will definitely fix that because you should have applications which run then with the latest templates which look perfect, and you should not get the errors for that. So now let's see UI5 lint. We should only have one issue now. The inline script, okay. We ignore that for the time being. And then we have the SAP F avatar. And this is now in the XML view where it detects then that we have used a control which is deprecated. And what does it say in the details? I think we should switch to the SAP M avatar. Yeah, SAP M avatar. Let's go to the XML view. And now here you see also one thing which is quite nice as well. I have here the UI5 language assistant installed, so the XML view code completion. And then also I get in the XML view exactly the same like from TypeScript. I get the support, and it explains here even in this case. So if I would have looked into my XML view directly, then I see, oh, it's I should use the M avatar instead. So it's already, you see, there is convenient tooling around that, which helps you to find also the spots. And I see here there is a red underlined issue, unknown attribute. Let's see, I think this is a typo. It should be called show copilot. So now this looks correctly. So this is also interesting with these unknown properties. This is something you should also fix. Let's start that quickly, the application, because you see also at runtime then a future fatal issue if such an unknown property is being used. So let's use the CDN instead of the local one. So, and here I see future fatal, encountered unknown setting, show copilot. So even the runtime finds things out, and especially for these future fatals, you should also take a look. If you have them, this is an indicator that in future, if you run the application, then with 2.x, it will not run anymore. There's also a query parameter, SAP UIXX future true. And if you do that, when I am not wrong, this will also break your application then. So you can also, let's use this, or say you use this flag, and this ensures, or this will allow you to test the application that the future fatals will be breaking. And it will also disable a few things like the synchronous tracks so that this doesn't work then anymore in this case. But now, if I correct this last part here, I should now be ready for running my app against 2.0. Together as one word. Oops, yeah, not in the subfolder, Devtoberfest app. So you need to be in the root of the application or the library in this case when running that. And now we have only the warning. So let's go to the CDN file and change that to consume UI5 2.x. Let's copy that one, which didn't work in the beginning. And keep fingers crossed. Hope I did do everything right. Hooray! Our OpenUI5 bookshop application is now running against the OpenUI5 v2 nightly version from CDN. Whew, good one. So, next thing. I want to show you how to use the OpenUI5 locally. So, in order to test then locally against, let's say, the OpenUI5 repository, you can go to GitHub SAP OpenUI5. You will find there is a main branch available. Here we have the main branch, and this is in 2.x, the code base, which contains already the removed or the cleaned up UI5 code, yeah, the OpenUI5 code. So it has removed all deprecated APIs and stuff like that. And this is the same thing like what we build nightly and then deploy on this SDK OpenUI5 org nightly 2 version. So if you want to consume that, I have made me a small script in the past because I copied that always into my repository. So I have this SAP set up UI5 workspace, and this is the UI5 workspace script. The default workspace means it's active also by default when you have this file in your project. And now I need to point to my OpenUI5 GitHub repository, and this is now interesting to find out. ///git OpenUI5. So this is my home of my OpenUI5 repository. And now I need to switch my OpenUI5 repository into the main branch. Git checkout main. So now I can use my npm start command in my app to run with my application against the UI5 2.0 snapshot. Have you seen that in the log? So here it says already, using OpenUI5 version 128.0, this is coming from the configuration, the UI5 YAML, but with the workspace configuration, we overrule that. We solve project core via default workspace 2.0. So you see here that this is now loading the 2.0 version of UI5. And if you are back, we see then here, now without the CDN URL, it also loads the application, but now it loads it with the local resources from my OpenUI5 repository. And I can then test my application locally against OpenUI5 v2. So, and besides that, application development, you can also do that for sure as well for the library development. So let's check quickly a look into that, Devtoberfest lib. So if I run the linter here as well, UI5 lint, then for my library project, I also get hints. So this is also described in this best practices for developers. So it says here in the library TS, I should use a different API to init the library. So this lib init. And then if this lib init is used, it should be used with API version 2. So for libraries, and just to mention that, I think it was here. I need to add the API version 2. And with that, so lib init is the new version of the library init command. We had the SAP UI get core init library command in the past from the core itself. But this has been now changed to a specific lib init module. And in order to use the new API features, you should use API version 2. This has some things you should know. With API version 2, in UI5, we don't register these lazy stubs which were there in the past, that you could also just write SAP M button, although this hasn't been required already. And then we required the SAP M button in the back for you. And this had all issues. So we also decided that this needs to go away. And therefore, we introduced this API version 2 to get rid of these lazy stub mechanisms behind the scenes. And you should know then one thing: if there are enums used in libraries, then you need to call a register enum call. It's explained as well in the documentation. Do I know it by heart? I need to lie now. So for that, I wasn't prepared. So you see a lot of things I do spontaneously while coding, then I come to the next idea. We don't spend, I can also explain that separately a little bit more in detail. But yeah, you can now use that as well. Let's say at the end, what I want to show you, you can do it for libraries. This library was already pretty good prepared. It also worked for V2 without the API version 2, but yeah, it's also something which could be enforced on mid to long run, that we also require that. And with that, I think I showed you now a lot of that tooling, a lot of the TypeScript part, a lot of development experience features which are being in. So this should be now for you also, let's say, a good starting, a good preparation for being ready to work on your applications, to look into the issues with OpenUI5 2.x. It's already good to prepare your applications and libraries right now, because as I said, this will also improve performance for that by making things for us better, not having globals, using the small modules, the new modules, and so on. And with that, we can also ensure that we only require and load that what is needed, having no lazy stubs behind the scenes and stuff like that. This ensures overall that the whole thing gets more correct. I said one thing in the beginning, because I don't show the bootstrapping performance, but we have shown that 1 to 2 months back. Some of you may have seen that at the UI5ers Live. For those who haven't seen that, we have this event regular also posted on our OpenUI5 org events page. And if you go there, then you find also here at the bottom this webcast. So, you see also the other webcasts which happen, the announced meetings like ours today. There is also later on this UI5 Web Components meeting for UI5 Web Components 2.0 and React together. It starts in 2 hours and 5 minutes. So this is the place to look into, and our recordings will then be, and hope around next week, we will have that recording from September available in our YouTube channel. And I think also Nico will post that link into the chat. And then you can also watch the latest news from the bootstrapping and how this plays together with all the UI5 2.x changes we are making, so that you can see how that looks at the moment. Having said this, I'm now more or less at my end. I just want to summarize quickly what is important for you to know. Best practices for developers, that's the ultimate guide in the OpenUI5 SAP UI5 demo kit. It's a must read. You should know about that. You have tools at hand like the UI5 linter, which implements this best practices and helps you to apply that to your applications. So use this tooling on your applications. We will also come up in the future with quick fix capabilities on that, to to do that. And we are also preparing now more and more of our templates that the UI5 linter is in. If Marcel Schork is listening, thanks for him to contribute that change for our TypeScript template. To integrate a linter here, we will also we will also roll it out across all our templates that this is available in general, so that the linter can be also called on each project by default when we running the lint command. And then, yeah, use TypeScript. It's as you have seen, it's a great development experience with TypeScript. You get a lot of things in place. There is nothing which speaks against it. We transpile the code in UI5 Classic code for the runtime, so it's really no matter. You develop that with TypeScript. It runs like classic JavaScript UI5 code, and it works for all applications definitely later than 120. And by the way, I also would like to mention that UI5 120 is the reference version for the things where we split off the things, like removing deprecated code. So if you are testing then and check for the deprecations in 120, this is already a good point for you to see the things which we are removing then in future versions. And having said this, I would like to thank you for listening this nearly 1 hour. And if there are more questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Peter. Awesome. We only have one question, I think, that wasn't covered. And it's the most obvious one. When is version 2.0 going to get released?
Yeah, that's the biggest question overall. Yeah, we have some internal things to solve. That's it's hard to maybe I'm not really allowed to say everything on that. So it would be good that Stefan Beck as a CPO is here to answer all that points more from that perspective. Yeah. For OpenUI5, we make it available now or have it available via the nightly versions, and you can use it also in combination with a GitHub repository. So this is there. For SAP UI5, I would say I hope somewhere next year, but I can't be that concrete because it depends really on discussions we have with internal stakeholders here and there. But we are really driving that forward. That's why we also invest so much in that environment, the tooling in this ecosystem to bring applications easily also in the position to upgrade to the latest best practices. Yeah, because this is, I think, the biggest point that we make it easy for everyone to upgrade to benefit also later on then from the newest features. And yeah, we have still also a bit homework to do in some places, but I can just say we give our best. The sooner, the better, I would say.
Awesome. That was an even better answer than I expected. So very cool. All right. So I think that's all the questions we had in the chat. So all that's left for me to do is promote two things. So first one is the validation tutorial for today, basically. So all the sessions for today. So first one you just listen to. Next one is going to be about UI5 web components, and then
just a hint, maybe if you would have screenshotted the slide where I summarized it, it would have been a good hint already for you.
Yeah, there you go. You can go back like 5 minutes and screenshot that.
Not make it
And then
easy.
the third session will be about micro front ends. So stay
Cool.
tuned for that. And then there's also another event that is happening today, which is not entirely related to UI, but it's Bugtoberfest. So you can earn even more points on the Devtoberfest game board by finding a few bugs in code that we wrote.
UI5 code?
JavaScript code, at least. There's let me see. There's
because then maybe you could try the linter whether it helps you to find it.
Yeah, I think it's just regular, like non-specific JavaScript code. So there's ABAP, Bash, JavaScript, JQ. I wonder who did that, and Python.
Maybe
So
I
you
know
can
this
pick
guy,
either one.
JQ guy.
You can pick either one, find a few bugs, and earn some points on the Devtoberfest game board. All right, so that's all. Make sure to join the Devtoberfest group, and thank you so much, Peter, for your awesome presentation. And let me quickly check any other questions left. Well, when is the 2.x item going to going to get on the roadmap? Well, I guess you sort of answered that, but there's no real answer on that, and you're working hard. Okay, cool. Thanks everyone for watching. for listening in. Thanks especially to Peter, and hope to
Yeah,
see
thanks for
you in the
having
next
me.
session coming up in a couple hours.
See you.